Imagine this. It's 18th century London. The city's absolutely buzzing, right? Coffee houses, intellectual debates, this huge curiosity about, far-off places.
A real thirst for the exotic.
Exactly. And into this scene walks this guy. Fair skin, honey-colored hair. Says this from a place called Formosa, Taiwan, basically.
George Psalmanazar.
That's him. And he becomes this instant sensation, gets invited everywhere, high society dinners, the lot. And his breakfast routine, you won't believe this.
Oh, I think I know where this is going.
He'd slice off a viper's head and then right there, suck the blood out.
Wow. Publicly.
Publicly, every day,
Yeah.
just to, sell this story that he was from this completely unknown land.
Talk about commitment to the bit. He really knew how to make an entrance, didn't he? That kind of theatrical detail just perfectly paved the way for everything else he claimed.
Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive. We're your shortcut to getting informed. We take stacks of sources, pull out the key insights, the real nuggets of knowledge for you.
And today, wow, are we diving deep into a story so audacious, so frankly brilliant in its deception. It didn't just bend the truth, it sort of reshaped it for a whole generation.
And we're your guides on this. I'll be leading us through the twists and turns of the narrative itself.
And I'll be jumping in with some of the deeper context, maybe some critical analysis, to help us understand how this whole thing could even happen.
But before we get into the thick of it, we just want to say a huge thank you to you, our listeners. Your support, honestly, it fuels everything we do here.
It really does. And if you've ever had one of those aha moments listening to us, if something sparked your curiosity, maybe consider sharing that spark. Like this deep dive on YouTube.
And subscribe to the All Sorts podcast channel. Join our community. We're all about curiosity, exploring the extraordinary together.
Yeah, and check out our other deep dives too. Connect with us on X, Instagram, Threads. Just search All Sorts podcasts. And seriously, to everyone already subscribed, thank you. It means the world.
Okay, so Psalmanazar. Let's unpack this guy. Because he was just as mysterious as this land he supposedly came from.
Right, his real name. Where he was born, we still don't actually know. He took it all to his grave.
There are hints in his memoirs, the ones published after he died. They suggest maybe southern France. But it's really just an educated guess.
He was basically a blank slate from the start, wasn't he? Which I suppose is perfect for an imposter.
And his early life seems almost like, practice for the main event. He dropped out of university, wandered around.
A bit of a vagabond.
Yeah, and he tried out different identities first, didn't he? Like, a persecuted Irish Catholic student.
Right, or a Japanese pilgrim who'd supposedly converted to Christianity. He was clearly testing things out, seeing what worked, honing his skills.
And then comes this really crucial moment. He meets this chaplain, William Innes, described as unscrupulous.
That usually doesn't bode well.
You'd think Innes would expose him, right? But no, he apparently saw potential, talent even.
Talent for deception, you mean?
Exactly. He didn't just tolerate the lies, he actively encouraged Psalmanazar. Told him to switch from Japanese to Formosan. It was Innes's idea.
Wow. So the chaplain was basically his fraud mentor. What does that tell you about the time?
It suggests people were maybe desperate for these kinds of exotic stories, maybe willing to look the other way.
Or perhaps Innes saw a way to, benefit himself. It sounds like a partnership, really. Psalmanazar wrote the first draft of his big book in Latin, apparently.
And Innes has probably did the English translation.
Seems likely. A joint venture in deception. And it worked, didn't it?
Oh, it absolutely worked. That partnership leads him straight to London in 1703. He arrives, and bam, instant celebrity. The first Formosan anyone had ever seen.
Welcomed into all the best houses?
Yep. And he kept up the act, not just the viper blood, but eating raw meat at fancy dinner parties. He was completely committed.
And then came the book, right, 1704, an historical and geographical description of Formosa.
Which became this massive bestseller, multiple editions, translated into different languages. It just exploded.
Because nobody in Europe really knew anything about Formosa back then. So this book wasn't just a story, it was presented as the definitive account. That's huge.
And the details he put in there, just incredible. He paints this picture of Formosa as this land of, good governance, incredible wealth.
Temples covered in gold, houses covered in gold.
Right, and teeming with wildlife elephants, rhinos, camels, even seahorses, all tame and useful, apparently. He filled in every single gap in people's knowledge.
He did. But the real hook, the stuff that must have really grabbed people, were the customs he described. Beyond the viper breakfast, I mean.
Oh, yeah. The really shocking stuff, like Ritual human sacrifice.
On a massive scale.
Yeah.
He claimed something like 102,000 infants were sacrificed every year.
To an ox-shaped god in the capital city he made up, Externetza. He gave it all these specific, believable-sounding details.
And the rituals themselves.
Yeah.
For girls, he said they were passed through the four elements 12 times. He even invented a priest named Jotoi Bonzo.
Chillingly specific, isn't it? And then there's the cannibalism.
Right, eating sinful women or discarded wives.
Yeah.
He really knew how to push buttons, how to shock and fascinate at the same time.
It wasn't just violence either. He threw in widespread drug use, too. Claimed Formosan ladies smoked, 6 pounds of tobacco a day?
An impossible amount. And he himself used laudanum, that's an opium tincture supposedly in vast quantities, just for show, to seem more exotic and maybe tortured.
He built this entire elaborate, often grotesque culture from scratch.
Absolutely. Nothing was left out. He even invented a whole Formosan language.
And the craziest part, people bought it. Linguists were apparently fooled for over a century because it seemed so internally consistent.
Yeah, the language is maybe the most impressive part of the hoax. That takes dedication.
He invented currency, explained his own pale skin by saying the upper classes lived underground. The sheer level of detail is staggering.
It really is. Inventing a language that goes beyond just telling tall tales. That's proper world building, even if the world is fake.
But you know, even the best-built facade starts to crack eventually. People did start asking questions.
Especially the scientific types, right? The Royal Society was skeptical. Isaac Newton was chairing it then.
And Edmund Halley, the astronomer, he apparently cornered Psalmanazar about things like twilight. You know, how long it lasts in Formosa.
Details a native would know, but Psalmanazar clearly didn't. He couldn't keep up when faced with actual science.
So it makes you wonder, why did it work for so long? How did he pull it off?
Well, the biggest factor was probably just ignorance. There was a massive information void, as one source puts it, about Formosa in England back then.
So it was genuinely hard to prove him wrong.
Exactly. There was almost nothing to contradict him. Plus, other things helped. Anti-Jesuit feelings were strong in England.
And he claimed he'd escaped the Jesuits and converted to Protestantism.
Precisely. That made him instantly sympathetic to his English hosts. He also positioned himself as defending traditional religion against these newfangled rationalistic freethinkers. That got him powerful allies.
And maybe people just wanted to believe it. It was such a wild, sensational story.
There's always that element, isn't there? The human desire for the extraordinary. But yeah, eventually, the doubts piled up. He lost credibility.
Became kind of a joke, really. That satirical paper, The Spectator, ran a fake ad saying he'd perform cannibalism on stage.
Yeah. Eating his own children in a play? Set to kettle drums? Ouch. Quite the fall from grace.
But his story doesn't end there, does it? His later life is actually, well, quite surprising. Almost a redemption arc.
It is. He eventually confessed everything, but only after his death, in his memoirs published in 1764.
Admitted he was French, never been outside Europe.
Right. And he apparently had a genuine religious conversion, influenced by a writer named William Law. He expressed real remorse, calling his hoax unaccountable pride, folly, and stupid villainy.
It's interesting, though, he kept using laudanum daily, even after repenting. Said it was just vanity and senseless affectation. Old habits die hard.
Perhaps. But he did transform himself. He became a respected, though anonymous, writer. A Grub Street hack, basically.
Contributing to huge reference books. And the irony. He even wrote the article on Formosa for one of them.
You couldn't make it up. And then there's the friendship with Samuel Johnson.
Dr. Johnson, one of the biggest literary figures in England. And he apparently thought Psalmanazar was the best man he had ever known.
It's incredible. They supposedly had this unspoken rule, never talk about Formosa or China. Johnson must have seen something else in him, beyond the famous hoax, genuine intellect maybe, or perhaps he just appreciated the repentance.
So, okay, beyond just being a crazy story, what's the bigger picture here? What does Psalmanazar tell us?
Well, it really shines a light on travel writing itself, doesn't it? Historically, that line between fact and fiction was often blurry.
Authors were part reporter, part storyteller.
Exactly. And they often indulged in, let's say, sins of omission and commission, sometimes outright fabrication. Psalmanazar was just an extreme example, a real trickster figure.
It connects to how empires were built, too, doesn't it? On these elaborate fictions about faraway lands.
Absolutely. Early globalization, European expansion, a lot of it was fueled by these kinds of narratives, which weren't always strictly accurate.
Which makes you think about hoaxes then versus now. The sources suggest 18th century hoaxes like his thrived because people just didn't know. There was that information void.
Right. But today's fake news, it often targets things where information is available, but people choose to believe the fantasy instead. They object to the truth. It feels different, more deliberate, maybe.
More resistant to facts, perhaps. So what's the lasting impact of this whole Formosa hoax?
Well, weirdly enough, his fake account is actually credited with sort of sparking the beginning of Taiwan studies in Europe.
Seriously, his lies led to actual academic interest.
It seems so. It highlighted this information black hole about Taiwan and the West. And even today, some initiatives like podcasts and documentaries are trying to fill that gap with real stories, accurate information.
So his fraud, in a strange way, eventually led to a push for truth. What a bizarre legacy.
It really is.
What an incredible journey we've been on. From Viper's blood breakfast to Grub Street scholarship, George Psalmanazar's story. It's more than just history. It says so much about us, doesn't it? Our gullibility, how much we love a good story, how information and misinformation shapes how we see the world.
It really does. And it leaves you wondering, doesn't it? In our age, absolutely flooded with information, real and fake, what does Psalmanazar's enduring power tell us about ourselves? About our own willingness to believe, our hunger for the exotic?
And how do we even begin to tell truth from fiction today, especially when there's still these information black holes about parts of the world? What's our responsibility, to fill those gaps with accuracy, not just more fantasy?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Well, this deep dive is just one exploration among many we've put together, trying to unravel the fascinating tapestry of human knowledge. Your curiosity, truly, it's what guides us.
So please keep that journey going with us. If this story sparked something in you, if it made you think, maybe share it, like this deep dive on YouTube.
And definitely subscribe to the All Sorts podcast channel. That way, you won't miss our next adventure into the amazing, the confusing, the extraordinary.
Find us on X, Instagram, Threads too. Search All Sorts Podcast. Keep exploring those rabbit holes with us.
Until next time, keep diving deep, keep questioning, and keep exploring.